Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of AZ Security. My name is Dylan Paardenkoper. I'm a cloud security architect at IT Impressive. And today I have Andy with me. Andy, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Hi, Danette. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome to have you here. And for today, we're going to have the topic around Intune Automate. Andy, can you shortly give an introduction what this amazing tool is?
Yeah. Firstly, Andy Jones. Some of you may know me. I'm kind of technical architect. I work for BT, but I am technical architect MVD for about 4 years, and I've also spread into the Microsoft 365 world. So I've got 2 MVP categories: Intune and for M365, and largely, I would say that's down to some of the work that I've done around the Power Platform, including a new tool kind of that I've got coming out very, very soon. Announcing kind of firsthand here called Intune Automate. Had a huge amount of interest and people kind of pre-register. So not quite there, but a few tweaks to be done, but it'll be released in the next week.
Awesome to have the a premiere, so to speak.
I think what you'll find is it's kind of like a product that bridges the gap, mainly for kind of small SME type companies that have, say, managers that are IT people as well, and the job roles overlap. So some key kind of tasks that you might want to perform against users that and tasks within Intune, and that's the starting point. And I'll be keen to get everyone's feedback at some point.
Awesome. Do you have a demo for us?
Yeah, okay. Let me share my screen now. This is a product that's kind of built, as I mentioned, kind of on the Power Platform, right? So just to kind of give some background, I know there's a lot of tools out there that are kind of built around, you know, vibe coding and logging on with your credentials through a website and that. And I think they're great, right? There's some brilliant tools out there. In fact, actually done a couple myself. But what I wanted to do is kind of, as I mentioned before, bridge the gap whereby you have a product or an application internally, right? So you've got full control over it. And if you want to edit and change it and adapt it for your own purposes, you can do that. Pitch a product which is kind of in the middle of a management type IT pro type scenario. So I created this tool, Intune Automate. And as I said, this is not the fully fledged app running. This is in the development environment. If I just hit the play here, depending on who you are within Entra, whether you're not, registered as an admin or a manager, you will see different. You'll get a different dashboard. You get a different options along the menu on here. So the first page you get is a dashboard. It's giving you kind of metrics around your Intune environment, depending on your devices, your compliant devices, non-compliant devices, etc. And all of this is kind of updated by Power Automate flows in the background. So it's not all real time. Most of them are scheduled. In fact, if I go in here, I can, there's a full list of Power Automate schedule tools in here, right? That's doing various things against your data.
Okay.
When you first register on the app, it will come up and prompt you for some information about your own tenant. I've skipped that here, but by doing that, that will initiate some of the data in the background, which at this point, right, is data that is held on SharePoint, right? So in that, there are some limitations. Didn't want to go down the route of Dataverse, which has implications on licensing at this point. So most people have got Office and have got SharePoint, so you can create a site in this data, and it works fine from a small to medium type company, even a little bit higher. But everyone knows when in this type of environment there are some limitations. The amount of data you can bring back, for example. So this is built around data that's in SharePoint. It's using the full Power Platform because you've got the Power App and you've got the Power Automate that feeds a lot of the data from your Intune and Entra database, effectively. So you've got the dashboard. I've recently added a new tool, a new element, which is one of the reasons why this has been more delayed than I anticipated, because I started going into UTCM. Okay, so basically, this is Microsoft's way of drift management within your tenant. And little plug, but if you're interested in that kind of area, I have done a blog around UTCM, right? So Unified Tenant Configuration Management, UTCM. And this goes into some of the information as well as gives you some PowerShell and all that, how to set it up and get it running. So I'm utilizing that. And one of the resource types that is quite regular, and that UTCM is in preview, right? So it could change. But at this point, I'm utilizing that functionality to bring it into this tool. And it uses a run book to go and get information, but it will give you updates against the different resource types. This is conditional access, for example, and you can see here that it was active. It showed that there was some drift in your actual policies, in which case you then go ahead. It will remind you that you need to go and do something against it. Then a monitor will run against that, and it will give you that update. So it's now saying, for example, there's no drift detected. Okay, but it will keep saying it's active until you go and rectify that. So over time, the anticipation is I will bring the other resource types in. So that could be across Intune specifically, but also M365, right? Potentially. And that could give you a snapshot of how your policies are performing, where the errors are. Now, this is important from both an IT pro and an admin perspective. So this is why I wanted to kind of do this, and it helped me learn. Right, it helped me learn this kind of area, which was good. The other side of it is you've got asset management. Now, I've got another Power App tool which I might mention before. I might mention before we finish, but Intune itself is not an asset management tool.
No.
Okay, it's pretty well known that it's not. You get a good insight into the status, your policies, um, where there's conflict, etc. But it's not an asset management tool. So, and in that sense, you can't. It's, let's say you've got other accessories, you've got other peripherals that are linked to you as a person. You might want to kind of add that in and keep a track of all of that, right? So I kind of added this in. Now, initially, what this will do, it will sync to your Entra. It will bring down your devices through the Power Automate, and it will populate in SharePoint. So you've got, a list of your, be it iOS, Mac, Windows, etc. devices. You can see here I've got an iPhone, I've got Windows and Android. And this is coming directly. I can show you there, right? If I go into devices, these are devices in my tenant, and these are being synced into the application, right? But you have other things as well. I can filter these by laptop, mobile, whether it's Intune registered, and then you might have accessories. So if you want to go in and add something new, laptop bag, I don't know, backup tool, or pretty much anything you want, really, you can assign it to a user, and then eventually, you're going to get a full list of all your assets. Now, the idea of this is it extends from someone that's not just an IT pro, it gives you that ability to keep track of all your assets, and that's the purpose of it. You can go in as well. You can, you can edit them if someone's the current owner and you want to switch it to someone else. You can do that sort of thing easily. Um, and I do have a flow which will, you know, enter is the source for your devices, right? But if there are some changes that aren't, aligned against the device within Entra, you can change them on here. Okay, so it's not going to be changing the source, but it will allow you to change some additional fields that I've added into that asset.
Andy, will it be stored in kind of database behind the scenes?
Yeah, everything is on SharePoint.
On SharePoint, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like I say, eventually I could expand that into a proper database for, which will give me indexing and what have you. But for the time, the small kind of company, I have tested this kind of ranging up to say 200, user accounts and all of that, not beyond that, and it seems to work fine from that perspective.
Cool.
Yeah. One of the other areas is application requests. Sometimes managers in a smaller company might be kind of said, look, I need this application. You're managing your devices on Intune. You've got a ring fence group of applications that you allow users to have. You might make them available because within company, the company portal, your users might have access to install available applications, but there might be other applications on a list that they haven't got available at the moment. And someone puts a request in to the manager, say, I can go in and I can literally, you know, find a name. I can create an ad. Let's just say testing, for example. I've got my credential, which all of this is backed off by, Enter and Intune, right? And by predefined applications within Intune, I've synced that into the database here. So I know which applications are available. So,
Nice.
okay,
Nice. Awesome integration.
yeah.
I see. Cool.
And then say it was Office or Adobe Reader, right? Then I can submit that, and that will sync up into Intune. So if I go cancel this for the moment, you can see here that this one I submitted a request for Andy. The last one was a remove, but before that I added him to the Adobe Reader. Okay, and then what I did is I removed him because you automatically get an uninstall option here. If I go into Andy in Intune, let's have a look. Look at the groups. Got quite a few groups here, but there's the uninstall. That was the latest action that was taken, and it's added. I'm in that group, so these groups would need to be assigned to your application. So you would need to pre-set them up before they're synced to allow the tool to do that. But once you do that, you can add, remove people as you see fit, basically.
Nice. So you're using Entra groups to enable people in specific applications or remove them, so to speak.
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
Nice.
and that's the purpose. So I kind of foresee a number of, like I say, admin type tasks that managers might want to perform rather than just IT pros. So it alleviates some of that stuff from the IT administrator, and that was a lot of the reasons what kind of drove this kind of automation tool. At the same time, what do managers want to do? They don't want to go always log on to the admin portal, Intune. They might not even have access to the Intune portal. So, but they want to get a snapshot of their estate. So you've got, a snapshot of your devices and a breakdown. You can see what managed applications have been set up. from an Intune perspective, and you can see your licenses, right? So you've got a breakdown of your licenses, and where they stand currently. With this again is a flow. It goes off. It will interrogate, if you like, your entry platform, and it creates this HTML on the fly, and then effectively it just populates this HTML into SharePoint, and SharePoint render. You just render it within the Power App. So there's a combination of technologies, if you like, going on there. I've also got this admin uplift. Now, the purpose of this was to kind of add someone to be an administrator on their local device. But I'll be honest with you, I'm thinking about removing this because there's a big move for, multi-admin approval, and this might be a little bit too dangerous for a kind of admin manager level. So I might keep this in just from an administrator perspective, because not everyone's going to have or use multi-admin approval, even though that this is kind of being pushed out more and more. But for the time being, I've kind of disabled it. So it may or may not reach the first version. I'm not sure yet.
Well, maybe you can make it an add-on so that you can opt it in if it's necessary, or the customer.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, depending on your own deployment, what you're using currently and what you want to achieve, it may or may not be relevant. But taking security first, that kind of approach means that you wouldn't necessarily use this, but you might be open to it. There's a couple of other features in here. So I've got a device rename. So this is allows you to anything that is managed through Intune, so not anything registered as a personal device. You can actually go in and rename a device. It's pretty simple from that perspective. And what you get in Intune, if I go to my devices, let's pick one here. Did one previously. Yeah, so I did one earlier today, right? So I renamed the device. You see, let's go to Asset Manager. This device is 2943808. If I go in here, I renamed it to for 3809. Now it's showing pending because that device will need to reboot before that will kick in. But once that device kicks in, the device gets renamed. So you have that facility there. The reason really for that is within Intune, when you're enrolling with Autopilot, there's a restriction on the naming approach and policy that you can apply to a device. And for that reason, in my experience in working with customers, they have their own asset management database, right? And the policies and that they want to, or the naming conventions that they use for their devices, does not fit the capability that Intune provides from Autopilot. So they need the ability, be it on an individual basis or bulk basis, to kind of rename devices as to fit their policies. So this was the starting of that. Now, there isn't a bulk version in here for doing that at the moment, but that's not to say I can't build that in. And hopefully, because it's a community tool, hopefully people will interact, and we can take this a little bit further. That's the anticipation.
Cool.
The last thing on here really to show you that is this persona packs, and this is kind of where I've got a lot of attraction for this tool. I decided that I wanted a bundle. In my experience, a lot of customers don't quite know how to design and take their application of how they're going to deploy Intune and management of their devices out to their user base, their employees. And the way I like to approach it is kind of go into the architecture of their personas. What type of roles have they got? What is significant individually to those roles? What type of security posture needs to be applied to those roles? So I went down the route of bundling configuration packs into kind of industry type scenarios, right? Which would be compliant as well. So I've started off with finance, healthcare, and retail. For the time being, the healthcare and retail is something coming in the future, but I've got the finance element. So you get a definition of what you get within this bundle. I kind of move to the next step. It prepares all the policies for you, and you can approve or cancel at this point. Okay, so you go through literally prepare, deploy, verify, and then it will deploy all of these policies into your Intune and Entra tenant. I'm going to cancel that there, but I'll show you what it does. If I go into devices,
And Andy, can you create modifications on that as well? I mean, this is now pre-populated. Can you
they're
can you
pre-populated. Yeah. So you've got config, you've got compliance, conditional access, you've got the definition of what is, say, standard for that type of industry, right? And it is basic because it needs to be a good starting point. Obviously, you're going to have your own configuration to add on top of that to make it bespoke for your company. But this is giving you that base level configuration broken down. Now, all of mine are, PIA, for example. So if I go into compliance and then compliance policies, it says here PIA finance. Okay. Um, so you will get the definition. Now, everything, let me go back to the application. You can look at all the policies here. You go into your catalog, and then once it's deployed, you're going to see all those that have been deployed. It's flagged as deployed, and there are some that at the top here. So, for example, they're paused, right? They're on hold for whatever reason. You might want to not want to include them. So, any policy that's a part of this bundle, you can enable or disable. You don't have to deploy it at that level. So, it's not an all or nothing scenario. It's on an individual basis if you want to do that, and you'll get a breakdown between healthcare and retail. Now, there's nothing in there at the moment. I've just got the finance, but this is giving you that kind of breakdown of what you have. If you wanted to change that, you can go into the SharePoint where the definition, the JSON for these policies are kept, and you can change them. You can add to them. You can change some of the settings. For example, you might want to auto enable a conditional access policy rather than make it read only. At the time being, obviously, for safety purposes, every policy that's deployed is not assigned to anything. It's not switched on. So that's down to you to kind of do, because obviously test everything before you deploy it, particularly, conditional access policies. So that's the kind of basis. But rather than spend the time in, navigating what policies I might need, this is giving you that starting point. And this will evolve over time. Either I'll add some different bundles in here. Let's go back. But this might be relevant for the type of thing you want to do. And I'm sure there are lots of customers in different industries out there saying, okay, well, what about this industry? What about, can you add to it? The end of the day, there's going to be a lot of overlap in these JSON files and these policies. There's some typical, conditional access policy, for example, that will be the same throughout all of these. That's the idea. I'm interested though to know what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think automating some admin tasks looks very easy from this perspective, from this portal. And I think you're removing a lot of difficulties, the navigation to the different kind of portals. And it looks very easy. I'm very curious what you're going to build in the future. And those industry packages, I think that is a very clever one because some industries are a lot alike and therefore you can help each other, and the community is there a perfect way for getting the information back and just making the tool awesome, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly something. I'd like, reaching out to other people. If people have got a thought along these lines of how they might want to extend it or use it for a different industry, then by all means, once this is released, for sure, get in contact. And I'd like to work with people. I've done this pretty much, well, all by myself, and I've been learning along the way. So it's been an interesting journey, and I'm really kind of happy and glad to get this out there. I know it's not going to be perfect for sure. And probably the biggest teething problems is when you've got a Power App, you have to spend the time setting your environment up to get that app running, right? Particularly for the variables. As you can imagine, when you're connecting your Power Platform into Entra, you have to set up, this is going via an application registration. So you need to set the app reg up so that you can get your secret, you can get your tenant ID into your application to work appropriately. So you can hook in and regularly get updates for your devices, your identities, and what have you. But what I'm keen to do is make sure that I don't put too many powerful actions in front of someone that doesn't have the knowledge to use it. So that really comes down to you. Always test, but it gives you the capability to make that decision. And all you have to do is say, right, I'm an IT admin, so I want access to it all. I know what I'm doing. I'll go in the IT admin group. I'm a manager, so I get reduced capability. And you will only see, a sub selection of reporting and things like maybe changing a device name and adding a user to the application, depending on who you are. But there is overlap between the manager and IT, and that's where you have to make the decision yourself.
Yeah, but less is more, right? I mean, I totally agree. As you mentioned, like give the right person the right tools, and if they're not allowed to, or you can minimize that, that's always better than just showing all the buttons, which can be confusing for a lot of people because
Yeah.
then the oversight is sometimes a bit lost.
I think that's probably one of the powerful bits about this is that because I'm effectively giving people this environment, this code, it's ring fencing in your own environment, right? So you're not reliant on a website that is going to do the updates based on comments. If you want to go ahead and change this, you can change this for yourself, right? The code is made available to you. So that's, from that perspective, it gives you that flexibility. And from a security point of view, it's within your own environment, it's within your own tenancy. You're not going outside of that. You're not publishing or adding your credentials into anything where there's an enterprise app or app registration from someone else in your own environment. And for some people, not it's less of a concern to a certain extent now, but for some people, that's just a no. They just won't do it. So this kind of jumps over that hurdle and allows you to kind of do everything within your own tenant, within your own security guardrails.
Yeah, I think you have created an amazing job, especially to make it just simple and easy to understand.
Yeah.
If I'm new to this topic, where do I get started?
Okay, I'm in the process of documenting how to get this set up, which is what's caused some of the delays. But at the moment, I have, through the Cumonix website here, you can go ahead on this link and just kind of register your interest. Okay. I've got currently over 500 people registered on this. As soon as this is made available, basically it will be sent to people, but it will be out on GitHub, and there's already a mobile version that I released previously, Intune Automate Mobile. So this is another Power App, right, which gives you snapshot of your environment, what your devices you've got, that kind of thing. So it's a cut down version, obviously, but if you want that, you can go and get that already. That's within Croxley Boy Intune Automate Mobile, and I will be adding the full kind of product here into another GitHub repository.
Cool. Well, when it's released, I will add it to the links below. Thank you very much, Andy, for your great demo, for your explanation. I think this tool has a lot of potential. Can't wait when it's fully released. But give us a heads up, and I will add the links in the description below. Any last thoughts that you want to share?
No, thank you for giving me this kind of window to kind of meet you, because we never met up at the summit. So
Yeah,
thanks for
true.
that. And
You're welcome.
I've looked through some of your chat on your channel. I think you've got some absolutely brilliant discussions going on there. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. It was great for having you on the show. And as mentioned, I can't wait to see your prognose to a fully version. Please let us know, and then maybe we can do a retake after that.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. For everybody at home, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts, please leave them below. And otherwise, I would say thank you very much. Until next time, take care.
Great, thanks.
Bye bye.